When I played Warlords of New York, the Theo Parnell mission was kind of laughable. The way I look at him, in general, is one who hides behind his skills, always running, creating distractions to confuse you with decoys and such. Well, I wanted to transform Theo's image, make him a cool role model, so that players would want to use his build. Well fam, I've done just that and more. With this build, you become a silent saboteur, destroying hostile skills without firing a bullet, all the while dealing damage over time that your opponent will never see coming. The psychological warfare you impose on your opponent is overwhelmingly frustrating. So many benefits to gain from using this build. One being that in Legendary and PvP gameplay, your teammates will absolutely love you, because you afford them the opportunity to focus completely on the fight without worrying about the threat of hostile skills. You'll become a skill hunter that not only instantly destroys them, but also autonomously deals infinite damage to players and NPCs alike. Theo really put his foot in this one, because the weapon damage capability you have with this are also on point. We have no more time to waste. We're starting right now. Okay, first of all, I did not expect this build to go so well. I've made a couple of character themed builds. I made one for Fei Lao, I made one for Keener, I made one based on James Dragoff. Now it's time for Theo Parnell. It only makes sense. And I did not expect it to surpass all of my expectations. I didn't think it would work that well in PvP, so I initially made the build with yaw gear so I wouldn't be spotted in order to have an advantage. And the build was good. I wasn't spotted. I was being annoying with seeker minds and skills and whatnot, but I wanted to do more. I wanted to base it off of a few builds I made from the past. Fatal Touch, where you deal damage without even firing a bullet. And when you do fire a bullet, it gets even more devastating. I just played a conflict match and I could not believe it. Look at the build, okay? It's a hardwired build, and this is an OG gear set. I'm talking about all the way from the beginning, almost 6 years ago. Back when they did the revamp, they completely changed hardwired and ongoing directive, and they became really good sets to use, specifically with the technician specialization. Let's start there because this is the origin story of it all, okay? Technician is great, specifically in PvE, because it has something called dismantling. 12% damage to drones, skill proxies, and robotics. This is going to get a lot more important as I get further into the build. I'll reference it later. But this is really crazy, not just for PvE, but for PvP as well. Then we have Amped, +1 skill tier, which is always great because if you have a 6-tier skill build, you can roll 1 armor core and be a little bit more tanky, which is always good. And then you have the Artificer Hive, which is the specialization exclusive skill. That's great for shields and buffing your skills overall. The main thing I wanted to talk about was the dismantling in reference to the build, because it's so strong. Now look at it, right? It's a 4-piece hardwired, and here's what it does. It gives you 15% skill haste, 15% skill damage, and 30% repair skills, so you can make a healer build if you want, okay? The talent is called Feedback Loop. Whenever you use or cancel a skill, your other skill's cooldown is automatically reduced by 30 seconds while increasing total skill damage and repair by 10% for 20 seconds. But if I'm using a chest piece, which I am, this increases from 10% to 25%. So 25% skill damage is a big boost. If you look at the backpack, it decreases feedback loops cooldown from 10 seconds to 5 seconds, which I don't really think is as important, okay? Because here's the thing, right? 30 seconds is a lot for a build like this, because my skills are on less than 30-second cooldown. So whenever I activate feedback loop, the skill is gonna come back automatically, which is why I said it's no cooldown. If you play it right, you're going to have your skills in your hand at all times. The weapon I'm using is the Pestilence, and it goes hand in hand with the Vile Mask. Now, let me tell you why I say this is the silent saboteur. Because if you look at the skill that I'm using, this is just one out of the many you can use. Some people use the shield to refresh their other skill, which is fine because you could pull the shield out, activate a skill, whatever. Pull the shield out, refresh your skill, then put it away. It's really quick and fast, but the shield is just that. It's just the shield. It doesn't do anything but protect you. I wanted to take it a bit further and use the Jammer Pulse. You got a lot of people using Seeker Minds, these bleed hives. You got all of this stuff happening in PvP, and everything happening in PvE. I mean, you saw in that legendary mission how I was just jamming those drone operators. It wasn't a problem, right? So normally the jammer pulse doesn't deal any damage to a human player or a human NPC. It only damages robotics and skills and electronics. The jammer pulses outwards, overloading and disabling hostile electronics, and it applies the disrupt status effect on the target. That's all it does. Okay, and because I have a 6-tier skill build, nothing is going to be able to withstand this jam. They performed an update a while back, maybe last year, wherein they made it so that if you have a tier 6 skill build, the opponent's requirement to jam that has to have like 4 skill tiers. So if you have like 2 skill tiers or 1, the only way that you'll be able to defend yourself is by shooting the skill or just running away. So you have a massive advantage with a tier 6 skill build. And I use the explosive seeker mine in correlation with this, so that whenever I use my jammer, this automatically gets refreshed and vice versa. So you could throw these out back to back, and you know how much this damage deals. But let me go back to this jammer pulse for a second, because this is where it all gets crazy. If you're using the Vile Mask, you can apply toxic delivery by using the jammer pulse. Status effects also apply a damage over time debuff for 10 seconds. Total damage dealt is equal to 50% of your concussion grenade damage and increased by your status effect attributes, which is why the composition I have on here is status effects rolled everywhere. So make sure you have status effect rolled everywhere on your build so that you can have the most potent toxic delivery ever. I haven't rolled this one yet, but I will. So it said that damage is also increased by your concussion grenade. That's why I have China Light Industries, because this gives me 15% explosive damage, which also then applies to the concussion grenade. You don't have to have it equipped or anything, but here's the damage it does, right? 1.6 million damage. So what did it say? It deals 50% of your concussion grenade's damage. So what's half of 1.6 million? That's 800,000 damage. So I don't know how this damage actually calculates when it comes to armor or NPCs, but I can see it. And I would tell you that whenever I get hit with toxic delivery after getting hit with a sticky bomb or something like that, by the way, I haven't even used a sticky bomb. That's going to be insane with this. But whenever I see that toxic delivery symbol on my screen, or I feel it, it puts you in a psychological state that you're taking damage, and it feels uncomfortable. On top of the fact that the damage that's dealt is insane. So you're dealing damage with a skill essentially that doesn't deal damage, which is why it's called the Silent Saboteur. On top of that, I'm using the Pestilence, so Plague of the Outcast is going to apply another debuff. And I forgot to mention, both of these debuffs you can't do anything about. There's no hazard protection you can use to protect yourself with, because hits with this apply that debuff, dealing 100% weapon damage over 10 seconds. And you know how this talent goes. So you're going to be putting both of these stacks on the player. That is crazy. Don't worry about the damage. It's going to be there. I mean, there are no weapon cores, and it scales based on weapon damage, but it's fine. I'm not even worried about it. I play the game and I've seen the damage myself. So let me get into the backpack a little bit, because I only told you about the explosive damage for China Light, but the talent that I'm using helps this even more, okay? Because Creeping Death is such that when you apply a status effect, it's also applied to all enemies within 8 meters of your target. So you're going to apply toxic delivery on any of the agents that are surrounding the one that you apply it to. But this is even worse in PvE. Okay, in PvE, I use different skills. It just makes sense to change my Seeker Mine to the Cluster Seeker Mines. Once I do that, then I can affect multiple targets all at once. Also in PvE, I'm using the Capacitor, which increases my skill damage with the stacks that I gain from landing shots on enemies. This also allows me to deal more DPS, because for each skill tier I have, I gain 7.5% weapon damage. That's crazy. How can you beat this build? This is so fun, man. I can't believe it. Hardwired is really easy to get. You can go to the base of operation and craft it at the station. I'm sure based on all the missions that you've done, you've accumulated so many materials in order to craft this, so I don't think you'll have a problem getting this build together. But specifically in PvE, the reason why you run through everything so fast is because, in Legendary specifically, is because whenever you use that jammer pulse, those robotic dogs and mini tanks, they're going to go down. They're going to take autonomous damage, plus the damage that you deal to them while you're shooting them. It's like you completely sabotage and disable them 100%. There's nothing that they can do. And because you have a tier 6 skill build, the range of this jammer pulse is so vast that I can't get out of it. I remember in PvP, I was running after somebody. I thought he got out of range of my jammer, but I still got him. So those people who sit behind cover with Umber or whatever build you got, you get hit with this, you're gonna move. Now, I don't know if this spots enemies either. I can't tell. It doesn't say that it spots enemies, but I keep seeing people get highlighted whenever I hit them with the jammer pulse. Either way, the explosive seeker mine tracks enemies. One thing that inspired me to make this build is how annoying the opponents were when I was going against it. I'm like, okay, he's using hardwired. He kept spamming seeker mines, and I knew he was using the shield. So I said to myself, let me take this a step further. And I made this build. Not only am I allowed to have infinite seeker mines back to back or whatever other skill you want. Like I said, I haven't even explored the other skills and combinations that I can use to reset, you know, like when you get the feedback loop, you keep getting skills back. So there are different combinations you can make to make it really annoying and effective against the enemy. So I'm going to really deep dive into this. This is definitely a build that I'm going to keep in my arsenal. I got certain builds that I just keep here. Like for the ongoing directive 5.5, I just keep this here. This has been here forever. So I'm going to make another Predator's Mark build, alter this a little bit, but this is too strong. And this right here, the Theo, is about to be one of my main builds that's going to stay here. Anyways, let me show you the stats. It's not really, doesn't really have much crit, which is fine. Okay. This is basically another type of damage. And one thing I love about this is that it's unavoidable. Like anything that you affect the player with, they can't avoid the damage. There's nothing they can do. And that's one thing I love about builds like this. Whenever I can get somebody's mind off the fight, it's a problem because I always solo queue in conflict. I used to have a squad. My clan was very active and we used to mob deep, 4-man squad, and I would never lose. But now that I solo queue, the majority of the time, there's going to be DPS players surrounding me from all angles. So it just makes sense for me to use a support build like this. I know that I love support player builds when I'm using a DPS type build. They just always have some trick up their sleeve. And this Theo Parnell theme build, it just seems perfect. You can use Spike, which is great, where headshots increase your damage by 25% for 15 seconds. And then you have the Technician Specialization Specific Maxim 9, which does the same thing. So these are good secondaries to use. But I don't really have anything else to say about this build, except that it's a beast. And if you made it here, I'd like you to comment Theo in the comment section below if you're hype about this. I appreciate you stopping by to the end. I'm sure you can hear the excitement in my voice. I always love making builds that have a multifaceted approach to it, wherein you can use it in both PvP and PvE. And this is definitely something you can do that in. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below, and that'll do it for this one. I'll see you in my next video. Be right out.